a lie, until you make it otherwise.
Wow, what's going on, everybody? That was the incredible David Diggs with his rendition of What to the Slave is the 4th of July, called What to My People is the 4th of July. That was done in conjunction with the Movement for Black Lives and a whole bunch of amazing, awesome people. David Diggs, who was also in Hamilton this weekend. We don't have to talk about that for 3 hours. All right. Welcome to the Bitchuation Room. I am your host, Francesca Fiorentini, as always. What's going on, guys? Are your dogs still around after the endless fireworks that was last night? My home is littered with just like paper shrapnel. It was all very scary unless you were outside, in which you were like, oh, it's pretty. Still sounds like bombs, but prettier. That of course is a really important reminder of this holiday and how, not only do we need to stop eating pigs' butts, but also, finally achieve justice for Black Americans, Native Americans, and everyone who's been brutalized by this settler colonial project. Oh my God. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. Hello, Todd. What's up, Desmond? Michael's here. Caleb has been making calls for Jessica Scarane, who is running against Chris Coons over in Delaware. Saw that. Very, very, very tight. Thank you so much for being here. This is our weekly show. If you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, welcome. If you're watching on Twitch, sup? Remember to click that little alarm bell button that lets you know when we're going live. That way you don't have to, you won't get caught off guard. You'll always be there. I'm doing pretty good this week. I am very excited because we have a great guest. Her name is Kate Aronoff, and she is a journalist and an author who writes all about why we must dismantle the fossil fuel industry if we want to live. And honestly, out of all the things I've read and all the people I've met, she is the one who has truly articulated from a left perspective, from a progressive perspective about how to do that. So I want to get into that a little bit more later on. And in honor of having her on and talking about things like the Green New Deal, we are going to be donating tonight's tips to the Sunrise Movement, which I'm sure you guys know has put the Green New Deal on the map, and also has been doing some incredible work, phone banking and canvassing and working for progressive primary candidates. Like Jamal Bowman, like Charles Booker in Kentucky. They have truly been intersectional in their work, honestly. They have a training camp coming up about how to defund the police, which I think sounds tight. So you can still sign up for that. We're going to donate some money to them. They absolutely deserve it. But before we move on, I am so pleased to present my friend and co-host of this little podcasty poo, Mr. What's his name? Oh yeah, Nato Green. What's up, Nato?
So are we friends or what? Do we decide?
We've been having this discussion about whether Nato and I are friends or just comedy friends.
Are we friends or colleagues?
Right. Do we just go out and do shitty mics together? Well, not anymore, obviously. Not clearly. How you doing, Nato?
Amazing.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah. You had a good 4th?
Yeah. Yep. I had a good 4th. Didn't do anything patriotic. Well, I did watch Hamilton, and managed the cognitive dissonance of enjoying the creative virtuosity that functions to redeem a settler, colonial, racist, violent, warmongering, genocidal project.
Sure.
And seeing it, and also there's this thing of how the impetus for the book Hamilton was that people know about Washington and Jefferson, but that Hamilton got written out of history as a founding father.
Right.
And so the book and then the musical bring Hamilton back to center stage in our history. And then watching Hamilton, the musical, what I take away from that is that the person whose story really needs to get told is Hercules Mulligan. Because he's legit the fucking coolest guy in the whole thing. Like, just a tailor, like, doesn't run for office ever. He's an Irish guy. Like, people are like, no, actually.
He's the Guevara of the Revolutionary War.
Right. He's like also people are like, well, Hamilton had slaves. It was it was American colonial times. They all had slaves. Hercules Mulligan had one slave named Cato, and he was a tailor who he was a spy. And his slave Cato did some spying with him. So that's like some Green Hornet adventure shit right there. Like, and the lines.
Is that a Marvel or a DC or a neither?
Neither. It precedes both.
Cool.
What's up, nerds?
What's up, nerds? I know what I'm talking about. You should watch me play video games. I'm gonna start a whole Twitch channel of me failing on a single jump playing video games. It'll be hilarious. I'll raise no money.
I haven't played any video games since I had a Nintendo in 7th grade, and I almost finished Metroid. So anyway, because I think Hercules Mulligan deserves, like, his raps in the musical are some of the best lines.
Yes,
he's a great character. He's the person, like, in the history when Hamilton got to New York, he was Hercules Mulligan's roommate. They were like roommates. And like Stanley Tucci and Ving Rhames were roommates, and Hercules Mulligan was the person who recruited Hamilton into the Sons of Liberty. He's like stealing stuff from the British, killing people, but just a tailor. And then the revolution's over, and he's like, I'm just going to kick it and keep being a tailor, do that. And then he's like becomes an early. He's actually also the person who is like one of the early adopters of manumission. And so I've decided, in the way that Lin-Manuel Miranda wanted to write the Hamilton story in a way that connected to his culture using hip hop, I'm going to write the Hercules Mulligan musical using klezmer music. So look for the klezmer musical. This is
Hercules Mulligan. I love it. Wow, Nato, tell me how you really feel.
A lot of clarinet.
Please don't desecrate his clearly fine name. Nato, I wanted to share something with you and our audience. By the way, you can tip us at TBR-Live, TBR Live. We're donating a portion to the Sunrise Movement, but also a dope way to help us right now is to write a review of this podcast. Give us a 5-star review. It helps people discover us. As one fine, I can only assume, Facebook hate watcher, I'm going to say 55 to 65, white, few beers in right now, probably very angry, just started watching or finished watching some Ben Shapiro. He's about to move on to Jordan Peterson.
He's just mad that there's a woman talking right now.
Yo, sure. Yeah, but look, NATO's there. He's there.
Hello.
It's safe.
Hello.
Anyway, he wrote us this review that I hope inspires everyone to write a different review and a better review. Because some of your reviews have been okay. Some of them have just been single words. This guy wrote a whole goddamn paragraph, and it says, okay, title, glorifies socialism, 1 star.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Yeah, we don't really believe in rank, so like 1 star is definitely fine. It's just the star of communism. They say Fran, strike 1, strike 3 already. Don't ever call me Fran, Franny, Francesca, anything but Fran. Fran and other co-hosts openly, I think that's you, Nato.
Miss Fiorentini, if you're nasty.
Yeah. Fran and other co-hosts openly support socialism. It's depressing that intelligent people buy into such a destructive ideology. It's also mind-numbing they broadcast over platforms owned by Apple, Google, and Amazon, but are so ungrateful as to criticize the very economic system that led to these innovations. The left in 2020 believes they would govern in a more morally sound manner than our current system, but nothing could be further from the truth. I can only hope their authoritarian tendencies become so obvious their supporters abandon them. Don't support these people if you believe in a truly United States. They're filled with rage and hate. Signed.
Some guy.
I can't, his name, it looks like MJ Raisin. So I'm just going to call him MJ Raisin.
Sure.
MJ, you raised some good points, bruh. I don't know why we're on Apple, Google, and Amazon right now. Is Twitch owned by any? I think Twitch is owned by Amazon. So, like, thank you for calling us in. But, like, I don't know why we're on Apple, Google, and Amazon right now. Is Twitch owned by any? I think Twitch is owned by Amazon. So, like, thank you for calling us in. But, like, I don't know why we're on Apple, Google, and Amazon right now. Is Twitch owned by any? I think Twitch is owned by Amazon. So, like, thank you for calling us in.
Look, when Venezuela starts a streaming platform, we'll switch to that.
Exactly. As soon as they have a Cuban streaming service, as soon as they have internet in Cuba, we will be on that platform.
Look, we could go sit in the Wi-Fi park in Cuba, do some streaming.
Also, totally, bro. Like I love how the idea that somehow socialism advocates for violence, as if capitalism has not given us the system of colonialism and slavery and plunder and looting for how many hundreds and hundreds of years? Like, y'all have had enough. You know what I mean? Like, enough. You've proven yourselves. Like, this is the whole fallacy. And I just said fallacy, and I realize I'm stooping to this actually level. But that's the whole fallacy of capitalism, my friend. So MJ Raisin, think twice, man. Visit Cuba. Flights are probably cheap now. Go to Venezuela.
The Cubans don't want because they want your tourist dollars, but they don't want you to come and give them your stupid diseases.
This is true. But they do have universal health care. So good luck with all that here. But for everyone else, please write us a review that's better than this. All right.
Yeah.
Write us a review right now. Make it as long and maybe as obnoxious, and tell us why capitalism has failed in your perspective.
Hey, I'll throw an incentive, which is that if you go and write us a review of the podcast on iTunes using that capitalist fascist platform Apple, and your review includes a citation of a book, I'll shout you out on the podcast next week. I want more reading.
Okay, so you got to back it up.
Yeah, I'm going to back it up.
Great.
I want to know cite your sources in your 1-star reviews.
Please, yes. Proper sourcing. No Jordan Peterson. Thank you. Let's move on to our first segment, which is what are you bitching about? It's an icebreaker. Let's ask everyone out there in the ether, what are you bitching about? What's going on for you this week? Did your rabbit run away because of the fireworks? What happened? What are you bitching about? Nato.
Francesca, I'm bitching about polling. I think polling makes us dumber.
Okay, yes.
First, people are selective about what polls they look at, and we only get excited about polls that tell us what we want to hear. Like the poll is like the craven lackey in the gangster movie. Like, yeah, you tell a boss, 53% of American likely voters prefer Joe Biden. What? Second, like there's all manner of assumptions and methodological issues that people who cite polls don't understand. Does the polling adjust for voter suppression and Russian hackers? Does the polling adjust for like bad campaign strategy? It's a poll. It's not prophecy. You know what I mean? It's not like the old lady down by the river looked into her cauldron of potions and intoned, remember the prophecy that the third moon following the 7th year of Anubis, when a plague has crept across the land, infecting Herman Cain and Kimberly Guilfoyle, then there shall be a 72% chance that Joe Biden will win Wisconsin. Third, the questions are stupid and the people responding aren't qualified to answer them, and they don't tell you anything. For example, this week, a new poll came out conducted by YouGov and Yahoo. That is Yahoo, the Friendster of search engines. And just to get a sense of how on the cutting edge of news Yahoo is, I looked this weekend to see what else is going on Yahoo, and the trending topics over there include Katie Holmes, the Beastie Boys, and the Chicago State Company.
Oh my God, so what year are we?
Definitely the vanguard. And the Yahoo poll breaks down its answers by race: white, black, Hispanic. Those are the options. That's it. Sorry, 17 million people who are Asian in America, let alone 5 million Native Americans. And then the questions of the poll are stupid. Like, do you think the country is out of control? Yes or no? Do you agree that America is an exceptional country worthy of universal admiration? My favorite question is, do you think this is a question that was polled to people? Do you think life in America is better or worse than in Sweden? A pollster was like, yeah, we need to know what the American people think about this. And to be clear, like,
poll, Swedish chef, Duffman, go.
Duffman, right. And then the headline, like if you don't read the poll itself, if you read the news coverage of the poll, the headline is 65% of people agree that the country's headed in the wrong track. What does that mean? So this is a view so if you dig into the poll, 67% of white people think the country's on the wrong track. 75% of black people think the country's in the wrong track. Do we think they mean the same thing? Like, yes, I think it's on the wrong track because a racist rapist is using the government to enrich his family and friends. Versus, yes, I think the country's headed on the wrong track because the blacks are uppity. What with their not wanting police to kill them for no reason? Like, it's not helpful information. So that's what I'm bitching about this week. What are you bitching about, Francesca?
Wow, I feel like you didn't think about that very much at all, Nato.
I've had some time on my hands.
It's been a good fourth. It's been a very good fourth.
Just me hate reading the crosstabs on polling.
I mean, honestly, to me, polling is basically someone looking into a cauldron and like throwing in little, horse tails or whatever after 2016. Like after 2016, I'm like, everyone's just pretending. It's all sorcery. Nate Silver is a wizard, but like whose tricks don't work. That's it.
Right.
Although he was like one of the ones who predicted more heavily that Hillary was going to would lose.
But he's so chicken shit because he didn't, like, some people are like made a prediction, and Nate Silver was like, there's a 67% chance that Hillary will win. So when people and then he could be like, well, because he's predicting in terms of probability, any outcome justifies his argument.
The only the only stat I like, by the way, did you know that 67% of stats are made up on the spot? Also, the only stat I like is how likely you are to get struck.
It was 69%, bro.
Yes, nice. Was how likely are to get struck by lightning? We should all know what percentage chance we have to get struck by lightning every single day. That should drive us. Right?
Good.
No? Okay.
Yeah.
What am I bitching about? Oh, thanks for asking, Nato. So obviously we are in this ridiculous moment where we're trying to put the cat back into the bag when it comes to closing or reopening or sheltering or quarantining America, now that we have a spike in COVID cases that we all saw coming. There was no respite from the first wave. And now, California just closed down in in-house dining or whatever, which makes sense, and things that I didn't even know were open, like bars. But there is no extra economic relief. So it really is on everyone individually. And as a comic, this is what I specifically want to talk about. Comedy clubs are opening. And comedy clubs in places that have fewer restrictions, like Oklahoma or Utah, or other places where COVID is totally on the rise. And I've seen some comics who are like going out to them and doing these performances. They're all indoors. And they have varying degrees of like how much social distancing guidelines there are. One says, oh, well, the staff will be wearing masks. Great. Well, are the people going to be wearing masks? Because if they're not, then that doesn't really matter. Then in the one in Utah was like, yes, everyone's wearing masks. You have to wear a mask. Tables will be separate and sort of far away from one another, but it's still inside. And like, I don't know if you guys have read or seen the studies being done about like how people got sick. And one of them was straight up an indoor restaurant where the ventilation system got the person like at two tables down sick. So like if you're indoors and you don't have a mask requirement, you're going to get sick. You're going to get other people sick. And yet I'm like, comics got to eat. Comics got to travel. Comics have to book these shows. And I get it, but I'm mad. I'm mad at the whole situation that it's leaving artists and venues in.
Preach.
Also book me, you know what I mean? So I have to make that hard decision.
Right. Yeah. It's hard to sell out when no one's asking. Yeah. We need a Green New Deal, but we also need a dick joke New Deal.
Exactly. In fact, we'll talk about that later because I have a lot to say about dick joke New Deal. Hold that thought. Sure. Hold that dick. All right, Nato.
For the podcast audience, I was acting out, jacking off a bunch of dicks. Sorry.
Wonderful. I am. Please keep telling us what you're bitching about. Let me see. We're bitching about mental gymnastics people go through to celebrate the 4th without recognizing the State of the Union. Like I imagine the current State of the Union we're in. Bitching about the heat. It's very hot in here. I don't have the AC on because I'm trying to get clean audio. So I have, dirty shirt.
I just want to say your room tone is phenomenal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Here, let's just all take a moment. Thanks. We're bitching about having to cancel vacation to the British Virgin Islands. That sucks. I'm so sorry. About why no other platforms other than the new black media.
The British Orgy Islands are still open.
The British Orgy Islands? Wow.
Yeah.
Dad jokes.
Dad jokes. My kids love orgy
jokes. Someone's bitching about the fact that only new black media is covering reparations for foundational Americans. Black Americans. Don't know what that means, but okay.
In the comments, say which new black media you're following.
Yeah. Let us know what new black media you're following. And I don't know what foundational Black Americans means. I feel like that's some coded anti-immigrant stuff. But anyway, we're going to move on into the segment that we always do every week because we don't know what day it is. Please let us know what day it is. I didn't say what day it is, but I believe it is July 5th, year 2020, the year that should never have been, that we will cross out and we will never repeat to our children. And we hope they're not old enough to understand what year and time is. Years are and time is. This is the week where. It is our look back at the week.
Sorry.
Guys, if you had the pleasure of living under a rock this past week and not paying attention to anything else, this was the week where Trump held a 4th of July event for a mostly maskless crowd in front of Mount Rushmore, a monument carved into the sacred Black Hills in Lakota territory. And some find that really disrespectful. I just think it's ironic that, 200 years later, the white man would willingly infect himself with disease in the exact same spot. That's that's brilliant. That's chef's kiss.
Nice.
Trump also announced in a very long speech that he would build a vast outdoor park that will feature the, quote, greatest Americans to ever live, as he spoke in front of a vast outdoor park that features supposedly the greatest Americans who ever lived. He didn't look behind him?
Yeah.
They're right there.
I'm going to build like this, but only more so.
Yeah, more like this. I'm going to carve more faces into this sacred rock.
In the speech, Trump said, "Our nation is witnessing a merciless campaign to wipe out our history, defame our heroes, erase our values, and indoctrinate our children." To which I say, to paraphrase the great philosopher Tonto, who is this R you're talking about, honky? It's not mine. Sign me up. And he said merciless, the merciless campaign. You know how there are those roving mobs of crazed leftists rounding up statues of dead slave owners, and then the statue begs for mercy, and the mob is like, "No mercy for you, you heap of bronze."
I hear that the stone people feel more pain.
Mm-hmm.
It's something to do with... anyway.
Until this week, I didn't know that Mount Rushmore was carved by a Ku Klux Klan member named Gutzon Borglum.
Oh my God.
And so I think
it's the clanniest clan name ever.
It's also like Borglum. Yeah, it's funny that like racist white people love to complain about how difficult it is to pronounce other people's names. It's like, sit down, Gutzon Borglum.
Gutzon Borglum sounds like when you've had like a good meal, but it's just like turning into diarrhea in your stomach. Sorry, Gutzon Borglum.
Yeah, right.
Little Gutzon Borglum. This was also the week where Alabama teenagers, if you guys didn't hear this, were discovered to have been throwing COVID parties and then offering a cash prize for the first person to be infected. It's a news item that's been making national headlines, and Alabama teens haven't seen this much attention since Roy Moore.
Ouch. I feel bad about making it's like Alabama can't catch a break. It feels like punching down. Like Alabama's always a punchline.
Sure.
And so just to offset this story, I just want to remind people that Alabama also gave us Truman Capote and Angela Davis and Martin Luther King and Sun Ra. So
what about Arizona, Nato? You like to pick on the other A state over on the West Coast.
I do.
Did Arizona ever give us anything amazing?
I haven't looked it up recently. Probably. They gave us that good. They gave us the justification for that dope Public Enemy song. By the time I get to Arizona,
there you go. Raising Arizona. That was a decent movie. Okay, this was the week where Trump denied having been briefed by his intelligence about the bounties being placed on American soldiers by Russia in Afghanistan, and he has yet to meaningfully respond to that news. He clearly doesn't understand the gravity of the situation. Trump thinks putting bounty on Americans' heads is what you do after a hurricane in Puerto Rico. Get it?
Yeah.
Bounty.
Who's doing dad jokes now?
Hey.
Hey. So reporters are trying to the covering this. It's sort of the classic Watergate question about what Trump knew about the program. Reporters are asking the question. You see this in the coverage. What did he know and when did he know it? And when they were asking that question with regards to Watergate, with Nixon, the keywords in the question were what and when. With Trump, the verb know is doing all the heavy lifting here. What did he know and when did he know it? Because with Trump, the answer is nothing and never. And that's always his defense.
How do you spell no? What kind of no? I've always said no. Also, I don't know if you guys caught that despite all of that, I mean, and in that Afghanistan news, this was the week where both Republicans and Democrats on the House Armed Service Committee voted to restrict any funds that might be used to help Trump remove troops from Afghanistan. And honestly, this is where I'm so annoyed at how we make everything about Trump and this president. We just have to stop. If Trump wanted to leave Afghanistan immediately, Democrats would stay in Afghanistan for another 20 years just to spite him. What is the worst that could happen if we leave? Think about it. What's the worst that could happen? It goes back to Russia. It's their problem again. Great. What's the proper diplomatic term for no backsies? This was, moving on, the week where Don Trump Jr.'s wife and Melania Trump left out in the sun, Kimberly Guilfoyle, tested positive for coronavirus. The CDC is apparently intrigued because it's unclear how coronavirus responds in a host that has every known STI and is 87% Botox.
Kimberly Guilfoyle is Donald Trump Jr.'s girlfriend, but as a San Franciscan, I can't get over the fact that she's also the ex-wife of California Governor Gavin Newsom. They were married when he was the mayor of San Francisco. So I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of Gavin Newsom. What we know definitively is that Kimberly has a type, and that type is rich, greasy, dark-haired frat boy. And it's good to know yourself. It's good to know what you care about.
I like him tall, dark, and greasy.
About politics or values. She looks for two things in a man: inherited wealth and L'Oreal Total Control Clean Gel for Men. And that's it.
I've never heard anyone pronounce L'Oreal. I feel like you really went for that. L'Oreal.
Well, I had to look up. I actually looked up what Gavin Newsom uses on his hair.
Oh God. That is, you spent too much time on that.
Did I mention that I had some time on my hands? This is what happens when I'm left to my own devices.
I would just say pomade, some, Clooney, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou pomade. Anyway, late breaking news, you guys. You probably saw this because you live on the internet like we all do. This was the week where Kanye West took to Twitter to announce his run for president this year. And honestly, that's the least surprising thing that has happened in the year 2020 by far. Also, does anyone else feel like watching Kanye West is like watching all of the side effects of Cialis play out in succession? Like nervousness, sweating, dizziness, confusion, irritation, overzealous belief in your own success. Am I just describing cocaine right now? Maybe. Nato, what do you think about Kanye's run?
I think that
someone's going to make money.
I think it's going to be as successful as when Kid Rock ran for Senate in Michigan.
Oh, those were such wholesome days.
Yeah, right. I want to thank you for the people in the comments for reminding me that Gary Shandling is from Arizona. Also, Charles Mingus was from Arizona. So those are two great people from Arizona.
Also, R.I.P. Carl Reiner.
Was he from Arizona?
No. But he died
you're
this
just
week.
R.I.P. from Carl Reiner. Sure. Definitely.
All right. How you guys doing? How is everybody? Am I reading comments right now? What are we doing? Are we talking? Are we just bringing on a guest?
Let's bring on the guest.
Hell yeah. That's pure vodka. All right. Without further ado, I'm so happy to bring to the stream, to the Bitchuation Room, into the Bitchuation Room, all the way from Brooklyn. She is a writer covering climate and U.S. politics. She's the co-author of A Planet to Win, Why We Need a Green New Deal, and co-editor of We Own the Future, Democratic Socialism, American Style, which I have a chapter in. And I'm so sorry, I've never done that to someone's bio before, like plug myself in their bio, but honestly, it's kind of like we're support. Anyway, she's also the author of the forthcoming book, Overheated, How Capitalism Broke the Planet and How We Can Fix It, from Bold Type Books next year. Please welcome Kate Aronoff.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I fully support you plugging yourself in, in my bio. It's a great essay.
I forgot to bring the book, so it was by my side, but I shall at some point during
I have
this
a
discussion.
Of them sitting on my feet as we speak because my apartment is small.
Oh, nice. They're just literally just next to you, like, hello?
Mm-hmm.
When are we being sold? Please sell us. Can you hold one up?
Yeah.
At some point? Yeah. Sorry, guys. Just stand by while we do a very shameless plug about democratic socialism. Kate was the editor of this anthology that has a bunch of different contributors. I'm one of them, and I wrote a whole piece about, there we go, the future of comedy or art under democratic socialism. Think lots of burlesque and very well paid. Kate, it's pointless to ask how you are, but it is very interesting that you are writing all about a Green New Deal and why we need one in this time when it kind of feels like we are doing a dress rehearsal for what drastically changing our way of life might look like. What do you feel that way? Do you feel like there are parallels, and what are those parallels between the coronavirus pandemic and our response and a Green New Deal?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of parallels. I mean, thankfully we're past the stage. I think when people were talking about humans being the virus and that, we're all screwing up the planet, and thank God, Venice is, there are dolphins in Venice again or something like that. So I don't think that's the parallel, that like if there's less humans, things are good.
Okay.
But I think there are things that people are sort of reconsidering. So things like, a 4-day work week, which has been a demand for labor movements for a long time, just lessening kind of work time. And we're seeing kind of that a lot of people can work from home, not everyone, of course, but that is a thing people can do. And having less cars in the street, having, people not commuting every day has some upsides. There's good things about that. I think we're also in a bigger sense just saying that we can spend a lot of money really quickly, right? It was like very fast that Congress sort of put more than $1 trillion out the door, where the line against the Green New Deal and really anything we want for a long time has been, this is too expensive, this is going to bankrupt us, et cetera, et cetera. Well, lo and behold, when there is a crisis that is recognized as a crisis, we can spend a lot of money to deal with it. And so I think that's been my sort of big takeaway. And there's, interesting things happening outside of that, obviously, but those are the two other things that I'm kind of thinking about.
How do you get our politics to remember that we can find the money? You know what I mean? Like, I felt like during the 2008 collapse, suddenly they found $1 trillion like overnight. And then like literally 9 months later, they were like, no, there's no money for healthcare.
So I just saw it. No, you didn't. I didn't. It wasn't there. What do you? What?
Psych your mind. So can you think of a good example of a successful political strategy that like help people sort of remember things, beyond that moment?
Set a timer, dude. I'm sorry, Kate. I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
That's what I do. You just set a timer on your phone. Oh, remember, we've got a lot of money.
Just a massive
Remember that?
alert
Remember how
for
you
the
can just
country.
invent money?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard when like the thing that we spend money on doesn't actually make people's lives better in the long term, right? So like people get, their $1,200 check and maybe that'll be it. And so that is like the experience of a lot of money being spent is like that. And then, a bunch of fossil fuel companies getting a huge bailout. But when a lot of money is spent to improve people's lives, they're more likely to remember it, right? I mean, think about the New Deal, right? Spending, a lot of money, getting people back to work, funding sort of big public programs that, very intentionally had a big footprint in communities around the country. There's still, I don't think all of them have been removed, but when the Rural Electrification Administration sort of put up power lines and electrified, most of rural America, there were big stamps on the power lines that said this was built by the U.S. government for you. And so I think it's, there are things like that which can sort of leave a lasting impression in people's minds. And there are still, older folks who remember the New Deal and talk about it as like this wonderful thing that brought, electricity to their home.
Not to plug this book again, but like the the book with the name, why am I forgetting the name of We Own the Future? Sorry. Anyway, the book, there's a lot of discussion about the New Deal, and specifically when it comes to artists who right now, I was just lamenting, are sort of stuck between this rock and a hard place of putting themselves in danger or losing work. And obviously that goes, musicians and any kind of artists who publicly perform. There was a federal works project that helped out of work artists and had like federally funded, theater programs and things like that, and books, etc. And like we spend a fraction of the money that other countries do on the arts, and that's all in that book. But I wanted to ask you
one of my all-time favorite movies, Cradle Will Rock, about the Federal Theater Project during the New Deal, not to be confused with the thriller The Hand That Rocks the Cradle,
also
about
good.
the serial killer babysitter or whatever she is. Cradle
Which is
Rock,
what most people like today, like the dude in our reviews, thinks that the New Deal would be, is just the hand that rocks the cradle.
Yeah,
but really
it's more like the Cradle Will Rock, which is just like communists making plays.
Kate, you talked just briefly about fossil fuel companies getting bailouts. We know that airlines got massive bailouts too. They were running like empty planes, and just burning all of that CO2. Burning the gas, emitting the CO2. What, like, you wrote something that I thought was really striking, which is basically like the way that our economy is set up globally right now, we have no choice but to bail out the fossil fuel industry a little bit. Like, tell me about that, and then maybe link that to like your proposal to just straight up nationalize the fossil fuel industry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the sort of reality of our global economy is that it was built on fossil fuels and was sort of root to branch designed around coal and then oil and gas. And so if we didn't, have some sort of support for the sort of undergirding of our energy system, there would be real financial hardship. And indeed, there are, a lot of people who work in those industries who are suffering right now. And a lot of those bailouts have gone directly to, the executives of those companies and aren't actually helping people who they should be. But the oil industry itself is going through its biggest crisis maybe ever, right? And that's sort of why the Trump administration has been so eager to pour money into it. And there's a lot of talk about whether this is peak demand, whether, just there isn't enough demand for oil moving forward. Companies like BP and Shell are really starting to talk that way. I don't think, they're not investing that way, certainly, and are just trying to seek bailouts. But there's already, a need for what's called a just transition. There's already a need to really put people back to work. And what we've seen time and time again, whether it's the coal industry, just laying people off, sort of sewing themselves golden parachutes for executives, is that companies don't actually care what happens to their workers, especially not in the fossil fuel industry. And so bringing them under public ownership by the U.S. government, taking a majority equity stake, buying up 51%, these companies which are very cheap right now because oil is so cheap, because it's at sort of historic lows, is a way to provide an off-ramp for workers into other work. And that, can be in renewable energy. There's a lot of jobs to be had there, and that sector is losing a lot of work as well. But there's also things that can be done right away. There's 3 million abandoned wells, many of which are just sort of leaking methane into communities around the country. And so that work requires a lot of the skills that people already have who've been working in the fossil fuel industry for a long time. So you can just put people back to work basically doing that. And there are states, very conservative sort of politicians who are calling for the government to have fossil fuel companies do that. And so I'm not confident we'll see nationalization in a Trump administration necessarily, but it is the sort of tool that, is used often in the history of the United States and sort of around the world to solve problems like the one we have now, which is this industry that's just screwing people over and sort of failing on its own terms.
Can I ask some stupid questions?
Please.
Is that allowed, please? So me being someone who doesn't know that much about what you write about, the assumption is that, Kate, you don't particularly know me, but I'm generally a genius. I just don't know a lot about your area of work.
Wow.
I'm obviously one of the great public intellectuals of our time. I'm just not an expert in your field.
Yeah. Have you heard my treatise on Hercules Mulligan?
Yeah. Anyway, so, but my assumption always has been that it's so difficult to make progress on climate change because there's so much money to be made from the fossil fuel industry, but you're describing an industry that is like a dysfunctional, failing industry that's being propped up by government subsidy, which is I thought I feel so dumb saying this, but it's like I thought capitalism wasn't supposed to work that way. If you had a successful business, you would succeed, and if you had are they too big to fail? What's happening?
That's not a dumb question at all. Just general public literacy about oil markets is not a huge thing. And so it is failing on its own terms, right? Ordinarily, the myth of capitalism is that it supports successful industries to be successful, but shale drilling in particular, which is the thing that we do the most.
Wait, what's shale?
Shale is a layer of rock that you can extract gas.
Is it near the kale layer? Is it alphabetized?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's right. It's right below the kale layer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. All right, shale drilling.
Yeah, it only powers Priuses, the kale layer.
Uh-huh.
But to get fuel out of that process is very expensive. So it's this hugely capital-intensive process. And for a while before the last financial crisis, it was just too costly. It was just uneconomical for any company to do it. And then when the government, bought a bunch of bad debt from banks in the last financial crisis, in its response, it lowered interest rates. And so it created this financial condition in which it was, companies could just load up on cheap debt. And so that's what they did. And that's been the history of shale drilling in the United States, is just cheap debt that they have used to fuel, this
coming out of the 2008 financial crash.
Mm-hmm.
Yee, I did not know that. I didn't know they were so linked like that. And I didn't know it was actually all that expensive. It looks it looks minimal when you see a fracking well, but underneath is awful and really intensive. Let's see. I have so many. Okay, back to the nationalization question. I'm sorry. I want to go back to that because is the idea that ideally to get out of this, truly get out of this, we assume these companies, but because the government doesn't have a profit motive, we don't have to we're not trying to get rich off of it. We're not trying to, let's say, and let's be real, we're not trying to do what Venezuela does and say, okay, we're going to only use this money that we get from drilling and redirect it into education, which would be one model. But if we are looking at saving the planet and human life on the planet, it would be, no, we're not actually going to make money from this. We're going to dismantle it. We're going to shut it down. We're going to transition it to things like solar, wind, other thing, renewable energy. Is that more or less the idea?
Yeah, I think that gets it. And one of the arguments which that sort of gets at, that's made against nationalization, is that, well, you know, every other big oil producing country on earth has a national energy company and they're not particularly green, right? If you think about Norway, which is probably the greenest national oil company on earth, their revenues are still really tied to oil. And so they have this, you know, generous social democracy. And a lot of that is from oil drilling. Right. That is not, I don't think, a danger in the United States. We have a hugely diversified economy. Fossil fuel exports are not actually that big a part of our national, you know, revenue in any meaningful way. And so I just don't think that the sort of danger of nationalized U.S. fossil fuel industry becoming, you know, Venezuela certainly, but even Norway is a big concern.
Sure.
I was really surprised in your article to learn how few people actually work in the oil and gas industry, like compared to other parts of the economy. Like it's less than agriculture, is that right? And like a tiny fraction of construction and healthcare and educate. Like it seems like it it seems like it wouldn't actually be that difficult to just like pay off the 1.5 million people who work in the oil and gas industry and let them retire, and then you're done. Like, you don't need to be like, okay, now you have to move from Texas to San Jose and learn how to code or whatever. Like, you know.
Yeah. I mean, and that's what's interesting about like things like a UBI. Like, I'm for UBI, but I'm also for, just like I think internationally, paying countries to not pollute, paying people who work in the oil and gas sector to take an early retirement, man. Yeah, work 3 days a week doing something else, you know. And I think that is a more effective use of money, especially when we're talking about climate change.
Go to an open mic, write some jokes.
Yeah,
start working in the oil refinery, man.
Yeah, I mean, you know, imagining that we can go outside again. Exactly, grow weed. People are asking about the Green New Deal. Kate, you're writing a whole book about the Green New Deal. It's not. It's everything and it's nothing. Like, it's, if you want to just explain what it is and then explain how it is we can get politicians on board with it. What I mean about everything and nothing is like, it feels like it's sort of a thin plan. Am I wrong? Is it, how many pages is it? But it's also like, it's evolving. It's like a living document. It's like, we want to commit to having something like the Green New Deal, but not every little nook and cranny has been worked out right now.
Yeah, so the Green New Deal, I think everything and nothing is a good way to describe it. So it is a resolution that was introduced by Ed Markey and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is like one version of the Green New Deal, which lays out a set of principles and priorities for how to get the country off of fossil fuels to run on clean energy within the next 20 years. Mm-hmm. And so it is on the one hand that. On the other hand, it is on the order of something like the New Deal, which is rewriting the social contract and a new understanding of what the government does for people, right? And so that is the sort of bigger context of the Green New Deal, which is not going to be a set of bills. It's not going to be any narrow collection of legislation, but is really a new way of thinking about what government is for. And I think that's the sort of vision that really freaks Fox News out. But they're
right to be scared. I mean, arguably, I think sometimes Tucker Carlson does a better job of talking about the Green New Deal because it's like, just to sound the alarm about it. And it's like, they want a socialist takeover. And it's like, yeah, yes.
Can I ask, like, it's easy to become paralyzed by despair when you think about climate change, for me anyway, like, and it's like, my children are going to be climate refugees, and there's not going to be any more food, and everything is going to be Fury Road, and that's the future. So it's like, it seems like what the science says is that everybody needs to do everything immediately, basically, to like change the arc of so, like, to try to think about the Green New Deal, like there's so many different pressure points of technological innovation and corporate behavior and federal action and like what can state and local governments do. And then there are other people who say like it doesn't matter what the US does if China's not a partner. And so then there's this whole other question about diplomacy. Like I guess so. One question I have is like, what is the role? Like, how much space is there for? Like, it seems like the state and local government could do a lot. On the other hand, it seems like the city of San Francisco leading a big tree planting initiative seems like pissing in the hurricane, to use a technical term.
Yeah, that last part is totally
yes
right.
to the last part.
Yeah,
it's all pissing in a hurricane. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that is a real concern, but I think something that the Green New Deal does, which has been, I think, a weak point for climate movements for a long time, is the Green New Deal says, this is not primarily an issue of sacrifice, right? And that we usually think about climate change as either these sort of like horrific dystopias or of like, we all need to give something up. We have to, wear hair shirts and like only eat carrots and kale and or something like that. And the Green New Deal sort of poses this as a problem of abundance, right? This is using the sort of vast resources that the United States has, the richest country that has ever existed, and sort of just figuring out a new way to spread that around. And I think it's helpful maybe to consider that things as they are right now and in the world around on fossil fuels are not great, right, for a lot of people. So the transition into something else is not necessarily a sacrifice for everyone. I think there are, certainly fossil fuel executives who will have to sacrifice a lot, billions of dollars potentially in stranded assets. But for everyone else who is not, making out so well in the world we live in now, this can be a much better world and actually makes, I think that makes the politics a little more possible when there is, such a clear advantage for so many people. Yeah.
I wanted to link, just go right to it and ask you, I've done a couple of pieces about this and I thought about it a little bit. I think you've thought about it a lot, but is it possible to what extent to keep capitalism and save the planet?
Yeah, good, very big question. I think, capitalism gets used to refer to a lot of things. I think certainly given the timeline that we have to transition away from fossil fuels, things that we associate with capitalism will certainly be a part of that, right? There will be private companies who make solar panels and wind turbines. There will be, markets that satisfy the needs for those things that are all sort of a part of this process because we live in a capitalist system and we're not going to sort of dismantle that before we decarbonize the entire global economy. At the same time, I think doing anything at meaningful scale about climate change means replacing capitalism as society's operating system. And what I mean by that is just that, capitalism is at its root an extractive system, which, devalues land, labor, and life for profit. And that has proven itself to be incompatible with any sort of sustainable economy. And so in order to build that sustainable economy, we need to actually just, really rethink what it is that society is valuing and what economies are sort of chasing as a goal that is something other than just endless GDP growth.
Can we still keep Amazon Prime and the Amazon?
I think, my friend Sarah Jaffe's written a bit about this, but I think there's a good case for nationalizing Amazon too.
Wow, yes.
Which I am not the expert at, but just the sheer logistical network that Amazon has seems no one man should.
But to deliver COVID-19 testing, for the love of fuck.
I want one pen by tomorrow, and I want it for basically free.
This is not the pen that I wanted.
Send it back.
Send it back. I think that's really what scares the right, is that we are going to have to rethink how we value those things, how we value land and labor and life. And if I can't get my pen tomorrow, is that worth it, right? Like the thing that I just was able to do as of 3 years ago, I don't want to give up. for some reason, even though I can't go outside and breathe the air right now. And, you know, I mean, so I feel like the sunny sort of like, well, you don't have to give up your freedoms. We can have it all. We just switched to renewable. It's like, I get that. Like, I understand that the Green New Deal wants to like posit something really positive, but I'm also like, I think maybe we are going to have to sacrifice a little bit of convenience for a lot healthier of communities. Like, yeah, maybe this, like, I know a lot of cities around the world have done the like, okay, your license plates ends in whatever, a letter or number, you can drive into the city today, or you can't drive into the city today. And I think about, and that works, you know, it cuts pollution, it cuts emissions, and we could have something like that. Okay, we alternate work days and commute days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you know, Tuesday, Thursday, whatever. The Tuesday, Thursday people really have it easy. But I've been thinking about this in terms of the pandemic, because it's like every other fucking country has, except for Brazil. Brazil's over here. But every other country has gotten this right. Like, they've been able to obey some sort of federal law. And people on the left are even like, well, that's freedoms. Like, we can't, how are you gonna, you know, contact tracing is authoritarianism. No, it's not. It's not. It's saving people's lives. And so I'm looking at, like, you know, you've written about international cooperation around climate change. And I think about that with the pandemic, and I'm like, yo, everyone's got this right except for the United States. Everyone understands the trade-off between, okay, I'm going to have to stay home. It's a sacrifice of freedom. I'm going to have to wear a mask. It's a sacrifice of whatever, my ugly ass face, in exchange for survival. You know, so it's almost like when I look outside of the States, I'm very heartened. When I look inside, I'm very, you know, very worried.
Yeah, I mean, that there is a heartening story in that, which I think is really I think it's something to think about, and I think has given, you know, me and other climate folks some pause. It's just how resistant some Americans are to the idea of change, but you know, that every country in the world has managed to get this right, I think is a positive, maybe climate story, right? Maybe, you know, if the U.S. continues to be a sort of backward country on a number of fronts, including climate and just its general relationship to sort of science, then maybe the rest of the world will get its act together. It'd certainly be better if the United States was not, you know, run as it is now and could do something better. But but yeah, there are, you know, we are not the world as much as Americans like to think we are.
There's a question actually on Facebook. Haya asks, and it's something I feel like you've spoken a lot about, and Kate's awesome on Twitter. You should all follow her if you don't already, because you're very good at identifying targets. And Haya asks, is changing individual behaviors an effective response to climate change, or does the responsibility rest with airlines, coal, et cetera, et cetera? And like, how do you deal with that push and pull between, you know, personal responsibility versus everything else?
Yeah, I am generally pretty down on the idea that personal responsibility is the thing that's going to save us. I think if it makes you feel like you are doing something about this massive crisis, and it, you know, helps you to really wrap your head around stuff, to you know, bike to work, to join a CSA, those are all good things to be doing, and I don't want to discourage people from doing them at all. And I think that is a real genuine thing, that people want to feel like they can have a role in this crisis. And I don't want to disparage that, but at the same time, we know, as you know, as we're seeing with the coronavirus, that the real action has to happen at the federal level. I don't think it's up to, you know, it should be up to like fossil fuel companies to change on their own. It's going to be regulation that makes that happen. It's going to be, you know, saying you cannot dig up as much oil as you currently have in your reserves. That can't happen. And so I don't think it's either, you know, personal responsibility that it's going to keep fossil fuels in the ground. It's not also corporations who are going to have their own, you know, free will and like, you know, commitment to some kind of green future do that either.
I have a question about oil reserves. Are they like diamond reserves where it's like, we don't really know how much there is, they just jack up the price, and, you know, whomever wants their little engagement ring, you know, dust the blood off of it, whatever. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, is it like a secret how much oil reserves there are, or do we know?
I think we generally know. I am not an expert in geology.
Where
but,
are they?
but generally, what's sort of in a company's reserves is a known entity, and then they're always exploring for new reserves.
Somehow. I mean,
somehow.
it reminds me of, I don't know, this is a weird, it's not a weird analogy, but I always think of like the occupation of Palestinian territory and essentially like peace deal, right? Oh, we're talking about a peace deal.
You
So
always think about that?
I always think
That's
about
what
it.
you
Oh
always
my
think
God.
about, Francesca?
Yeah. Anything. Oh my God, this is like the occupation of Palestine. But it
Just like
reminds me of like, if we're really trying to stop, right? I mean, this is the whole like do no harm thing. I think about in terms of, you know, the occupation, where it's like the peace process has always been negotiated when settlements are currently being built. So there's never been a, hey, can you just stop doing that? You know, that's never been seriously considered by the Israeli government. It's never really been on the table. And I feel like the same with the fossil fuel industry and just climate change in general is like, if we can't just stop, then transitioning feels, I mean, you know, we're just kind of like digging in sand. We're or whatever the right analogy is, to feel like we're kind of just, you know, eating our own tail type thing, because we're working over here, but we're digging over here. You know, we're stopping over here, we're transitioning over here, but we're digging over here. Is that just how it's going to have to be? Or do you think are moratoriums like a possible thing?
I think it's possible. I mean, I think there's also an interesting synergy happening. Like just tonight, the Atlantic Coast Pipeline was announced that is not moving forward. This project by Duke and Dominion, two massive energy companies. And that has been the target of activist movements for a long time to stop it from being built. And so this thing is happening where the sort of internal logic, market logic of the fossil fuel industry, which is looking at, you know, oil prices lower than they've been in decades, is aligning in this weird way with the things that organizers have been demanding for a long time, which is to stop building new fossil fuel infrastructure because we don't need it. And so those things are combining to create, in some ways, less fossil fuel infrastructure and less investment in this stuff that's killing us.
Right.
So, you know.
And I always want to shout out that Sunrise Movement is one of those awesome groups that has been doing such amazing work. And we are donating a portion of your very generous tips to the Sunrise Movement, TBR Live. Kate, anything you want to add or say before we move on to our next segment? I don't know why I'm speaking like that.
No, I could talk about oil markets for days, but.
Okay, I
fun.
had this question for you. You can answer. I know you know the answer quickly, which is 3 immediate steps to decarbonize the planet. Like, what would you just dream? 1, 2, 3, go.
Oh wow! Federal job guarantee.
Federal job guarantee. Okay.
National renewable portfolio standard.
I don't know what those words mean together.
Electrifying the energy system, and
so moving it away from coal.
Yes, electric, bringing more things onto the grid. And
more. Okay.
And number 3, I guess, ban cars from a lot more places would be a big one.
Hell yeah.
It was crazy to me to see, like, I mean, I know we were joking about the dolphins in Venice, but like how rapidly the air quality changed in the first month of shelter in place.
Right.
You know, like just because nobody was going anywhere. It was really incredible.
Yeah. My hope for New York City is that we eventually replace parking spots with outdoor cafes.
Oh, I love that. Oh, I thought you were going to say that there will be eventual dolphins in the canals of New York City because Manhattan will be underwater.
Get you a Gowanus dolphin.
Battling the alligators.
If there was a dolphin in the Gowanus Canal, like, run. Just run.
Over.
Swim. It's done. It's done. Yeah. That dolphin is not right. All right?
It'll be like smoking.
Long time no see. All right. Moving on, Kate. Will you stay for our last segment?
Sure. Yeah.
Awesome. We switched it up we switched it up a little bit last minute. We were gonna do the least cancelable founding fathers, but we don't know enough about the founding fathers. No, I'm kidding. We have something better because our president, Trump, is planning a vast outdoor park that features the statues of the greatest Americans to ever live. That is not Mount Rushmore.
Hang on, wait. I have to tee it up for the listeners.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, this week in new segment of the week.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry,
new segment of the week.
New segment of the week is our Garden of American Heroes. Who would we want in the Garden of American Heroes? Trump has suggested everyone except for anyone Latino, anyone Asian, any Democrats, including your boy FDR, Kate. But Daniel Boone, the famous frontiersman, which I didn't realize, I've never seen the word frontiersman outside of like Disneyland or any kind of theme park. Davy Crockett, Billy Graham are among the people who are in his Garden of Heroes. Also, Alexander Hamilton, Abraham Lincoln. Who else? Amelia Earhart. That's tight, I guess. Antonin Scalia. Where are they going to find all that rock? All right. So if we were to redo this, who would we want in our heroes garden? Jump in wherever. Nato, have you thought about this?
Give me a minute.
Okay, let me just list. So I had two very separate columns because initially I was like Donna Summer, Marvin Gaye, Aretha Franklin, and then I was like, Francesca, it can't just be all singers, like, all right, but Donna Summer for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Bad Girls, and then a few other people. Sitting Bull, the Lakota leader. Ella Baker, civil rights movement leader, co-founder of Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, I believe. Asian American Wong Kim Ark, who I just learned about thanks to the PBS documentary Asian Americans, who helped win birthright citizenship for Americans because he fought for it. He was born in San Francisco. Was like, what the hell? That's why we can be born into this country and have citizenship. Mark Anthony, because hell yeah. New York, Bronx, salsa. Mark Anthony, all right? That dude is the coolest looking skeleton I've ever seen, all right? Hottest skeleton.
Loved him in Man on Fire, the Denzel Washington movie.
Was he actually in that? Oh, he was, right?
He was the father of the girl who gets kidnapped.
Was he good?
He wasn't a good person. No.
Oh, he's a bad person, but he was a good actor.
My favorite Man on Fire is the Denzel Washington action movie set in Mexico City, where that is like hit or miss with the subtitles, where like throughout the movie they'll be like, he is part of a brotherhood. The brotherhood is called La Hermandad, and then on the bottom it'll be like the Brotherhood. La Hermandad means the Brotherhood. Thanks.
Hermandad.
La Hermandad.
Okay, a couple more, and then I want to read I'm going to read everyone else's in a second, but someone says George Carlin. Amen, Todd. And then my last one is Lucy Parsons, unionist, radical, socialist, anarcho-communist. Her mother was a slave. She was in the Haymarket Affair / riot, fought for an 8-hour workday, fought for a 40-hour work week. Now we can fight for a 27-hour work week and let's be real, 4-hour workday. Who you don't do any more work than 4 hours. 4 is the max. Like real work, 4.
Yeah, I agree. These are some great ideas in the comments. Angela Davis, Tommy Douglas, Whoopi Goldberg, Dolly Parton, sure, Cesar Chavez, Betsy Ross was actually on Trump's list.
Yeah, I know.
James Baldwin, Nina Simone.
Ooh.
Those are good.
Aaron Brockovich? No.
No.
Sure. No.
Kate says, okay. Just not the Julia Roberts. As long as she doesn't look like Julia Roberts.
That would be a strange move on their part, too.
That would be.
Aaron Brockovich asked for
but she was hot, so we're gonna put her. No. Samuel L. Jackson? No. Maybe. Samuel L. From Pulp Fiction, for sure.
Dick Gregory.
Nice.
I would be in my Garden of Heroes.
Kate, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think we've named a lot of good ones. I would throw a Philip Randolph into the mix, the labor leader.
Pullman's workers,
Pullman workers strike also helped. I just learned this recently. Helped desegregate the defense production industry before World War II.
Yep.
Oh shit!
There's a good movie about him called 10,000 Black Men Named George.
Really?
Starring
that
Andre
sounds
Braugher.
made up. Okay.
No, it was like a, like made for television movie, but you can rent it. 10,000 Black Men Named George, starring Andre Braugher and like a who's who of black actors from 15 years ago. It's really good.
Nice.
Well,
FDR's got to be in there, right?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Complicated figure, but
okay.
Did good things. I'd say like Harry Belafonte.
Ooh.
Be a good one.
Nice.
On theme. Who else? Just hard to agree on Dolly Parton, I think.
Dolly's not in there. Did someone say Dolly Parton?
Someone said Dolly. That's a great suggestion.
Absolutely. Yeah. James Brown, yes. Muhammad Ali, yes. Muhammad Ali, come on. Lassie, I'm gonna put that to a vote.
Say Nat Turner. Good one.
Yeah.
Who was?
Led a massive slave uprising.
Fuck yeah. Eugene Debs. Damn, we're digging deep into this Sochi history, man. Not that deep, but yeah, Eugene Debs. BP oil spill responders? Sure.
Yep.
Why not? Put them, everyone here. We've talked about on this show how no one should get a statue, but maybe everyone should get a statue. It'll be like a yard sale vintage shop. It's like where you're just like, okay, you're just going through. It'll be like a wax museum, but better.
There are millions of people out of work. There's a lot of work to be done building a bunch of statues.
Building statues. I don't know if I've mentioned on the podcast recently that I lived in Cuba. If that details do, but in Cuba, like there's a plaque everywhere in the country that Cubans were killed by the CIA. Around the Bay of Pigs, like every half a mile, there's a big stone tablet with the names of every single Cuban that was killed during the invasion. Like it's not just like the generals and the committee; it's just like every single individual gets remembered somehow where they were murdered by the counter-revolutionary forces.
Damn!
Wow.
There's also like an American warplane from the Bay of Pigs that's still on display.
Yeah. They were like, yeah, we took this.
We got that.
Yeah.
And then we let everyone go. We didn't kill any of the prisoners. They actually they drank pina coladas and chilled on the beach for quite a long time. It was nice. They didn't want to leave. We had to force them out.
Sorry, Desmond. I agree on Malcolm X. The feed was going too fast. But yes, agree. Sure, Malcolm X, definitely.
Let us know. Maxine Hong Kingston. Yes. There was one more that I thought was good. Oh, I can't scroll up. Okay, enough. All right, you guys. Kate, when your book done? When is finish your book?
I'm gonna say no on Maxine Hong Kingston.
What's that?
She was not friendly to me once.
Oh, okay. Personal vendetta. No. Anyone who did
vendetta,
anything bad to NATO when he was trying to tell them an anecdote about Cuba or Hercules Mulligan?
Yeah.
No.
She was not feeling what I had to say.
How long did you take to say it, homie? Was it like, so? She was like, bye. Kate, tell us your book again. Tell us when it's out.
So the book I am trying to finish now and will hopefully be out in February 2021 is called Overheated: How Capitalism Broke the Planet and How We Fix It. Includes a long section about nationalization of various things.
I love that. I love it. That'll be so good. Thank you so much for being with us on the Bitchuation Room. Follow Kate. She is a good Twitter follow, whatever that means. She actually tweets, unlike some of us. And love her articles. Read them at the New Republic. Thank you so much for being here, Kate. Take good care.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Bye. And for all you numbskulls out there, thanks you for being with us. I said that right.
Thanks to our producer, Becca Roofer, for doing all the producing.
Becca, you the best. Thank you guys for the tips. We are donating a portion of them to the Sunrise Movement. Also, just get involved. They have so many great ways. You can get on a phone bank. You can join their training on defunding the police. That's dope. Like I said, true intersectionality right there. Love Sunrise. And yeah, rate this podcast. Listen to this podcast. Join us next week on Sunday at 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock Eastern. And remember... wait, Nato, do you want to do any sign-offs? Do you want to do any get your album? Do you have to buy it?
Listen to my albums.
Okay, listen, thank God.
Follow me on Twitter at Nato Green, Instagram, Mr. Nato Green.
Great. Listen to his album, the Whiteness album. That one's pretty good. Whatevs. Yay, thanks for being here. Remember, guys, don't just bitch about it. Be about it. Later.